So today we're actually going to be looking at the topic of fractions. We're going to be doing adding, subtracting, multiplying and dividing fractions. So we're going to use some techniques and shortcuts to explain and show our steps. Okay, so if we were looking at answering to simplify this multiplication, so we've got 4.5 times 1 and 3 over 5. Okay, again, I'm just going to kind of work down the page here. Definitely, multiplying and dividing, always write mixed numbers as improper fractions, okay? And we cannot split the whole number and the fractions because of the operation of multiplying. So again, kind of use this as your rule. No matter if you're adding, subtracting, multiplying or dividing, use that as your go-to. So 4.5 is a mixed number. We want to write it as an improper fraction. So we know the denominator stays the same, it's 2. 4 times 2 gives us 8 plus 1. So that means that we have 9 over 2. And then we're multiplying by 1 and 3 over 5. So 1 times 5 is going to give us 5, plus 3 is going to give us 8 over 5. Now, there's something clever that we can do when we're multiplying fractions, is that we can actually look diagonally. And what we mean by that is we can actually simplify this before we multiply. So I'm looking diagonally at the 8 and the 2. Okay, so I can see that both of those numbers are divisible by 2. We can divide them by 2, so we get a whole number answer. So 8 divided by 2 gives me 4. 2 divided by 2 gives me 1. I can also look at the other diagonal, 9 and 5, but we haven't got anything that we can divide there. So at this point, we want to now just complete the multiplication. So we're just going to multiply across the two numerators. So 9 times 4, 9, 18, 27, 36, over now 1 times 5, and that gives us 5 here. Again, we could leave it as an improper fraction, but ideally, because the question had mixed numbers, it's better if we actually rewrite it as a mixed number, unless we were told otherwise. So 36 divided by 5, okay, we know is going to give us 7, or okay, I don't know what it's going to, just do that on the calculator. That's going to give us 7.2, okay. If you use this method, we just want the whole number, so we know that we've got 7. Okay, how many 5s go into 36? 7 times. 7 times 5 gives us 35. So then we can subtract that from 36, so we have 1 remaining, and our denominator stays the same. So the message is, always with fractions, the denominator stays the same. So now, writing the answer, instead of writing it as an improper fraction, 36 over 5, we can write it as a mixed number, 7 and 1/5. And that's all we need to do. So multiplication, much easier. We do not need to have a common denominator when we're multiplying and therefore dividing. So we haven't got that step, which makes it a lot easier to do multiplication of fractions. So if we actually have a look at the next question, okay, we have 7 over 9, and now we're going to divide by a whole number, 7. Now, anytime that we have a whole number, we can make it, or we can write it in a fraction format by just putting it over 1. So we already have a proper fraction here, we're dividing, and we've got a whole number of 7, so we can just write that with a denominator of 1. 7 over 1 equals 7 as a whole number. Okay, now when we're dividing fractions, there's just one extra step that we need to do. We actually have to change it into a multiplication. So we can't do the division at this point. We have to change it into a multiplication, and then we follow the procedure for multiplying fractions. So how we do that is we always write the first fraction as it is, 7 over 9, change it to a multiplication, and we flip the second fraction only. So that's 7 over 1, we flip it around, 1 over 7. Now again, we can look diagonally and simplify before we multiply across. So we see we've got 7 here, so 7 diagonally here and the 7 here. So we know both of those are divisible by 7. We can divide them by 7, and that gives us 1 here. So now we can continue to just multiply across. In the numerator, 1 times 1, and in the denominator, 9 times 1 gives us 1/9. So now, 7 over 9 divided by 7, the answer is 1 over 9. And you know, I would have no idea what the answer was until I followed through the calculation here. And that's just a proper fraction, 1 over 9. But if you ended up with an answer that was an improper fraction, say it was 9 over 7, then you could just leave it in that format. That's fine, unless you had extra instructions to do it otherwise. So the key takeaways for fractions. First one is that for any operation, whether you're adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing, I really encourage you to write mixed numbers as improper fractions. So that's always the go-to kind of method. So for any operation, write mixed numbers as improper fractions to then continue. Remember, you do have that kind of option with adding and subtracting, but I highly recommend you just follow through with the improper fractions. And certainly for multiplying and dividing, you need to definitely change any mixed numbers into improper fractions. Okay, the second point that I'd like to note is that you should always write your answer in lowest terms as a fraction, unless the question states otherwise. Okay, so always write your answer in lowest terms. So the key thing here is as a fraction, unless otherwise stated. You know, again, the question might ask you, write in lowest terms or simplify, but if it doesn't give you that information, then you have to remember to do this. You always must write your answer. It's implicit that you write your answer in lowest terms. So the third takeaway is, you know, always remember that when you're dividing fractions, you have to change it into a multiplication and simplify diagonally, just to sort of do it as the quickest that you can. So always change division of fractions into multiplication and simplify diagonally. Sometimes you might see the terminology of cancel diagonally. I prefer to use simplify, but you can see that. And there's just a few questions for you to try. So that's kind of the lesson on fractions today. I hope you found that useful. If you need extra help, please reach out to me using the links provided in the description below. Also, check out the other videos in the series. Thanks for watching.